Okay, so we thought it would be a good idea to revisit the World Trade Center. It's only been 23 years and a couple months since then, but there's been some interesting things that we haven't necessarily discussed before. You may have seen them, but we kind of want to get into that a little bit today. So hang on with us. I'm flying solo. The Rude should be hopefully joining us later if he's able to get away. If not, we'll be just taking this on. We've got that special guest coming up. So hang on and welcome to the podcast. Rude Barn Podcast. We've got a special guest with us today. I'm going to bring him on board right now. I'm kind of flying solo. The Rude is out and about doing some things he needs to. He might be able to pop in a little bit. If not, we're just going to run with it right now. So I'd like to introduce everybody to my buddy T. And T, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody your background and who you are, that you're not just some low end minion friend of mine. You're a good buddy of mine who does a lot of cool shit, and we're going to be interviewing you quite often over the next while because you've got some huge insight with a lot of topics we're going to talk about. And today, we're talking about the World Trade Center attacks. And I put that in air quotes because there's a reason. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. You want to introduce yourself, tell everybody your background and who you are and what you do, and as much as you want to. And,
sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, this isn't by design. The black screen here. I would normally be visible, but I'm in a vehicle, so it's not a clandestine podcast.
Right.
You'll see the mug. Yeah, no, not today.
Right.
Not today.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I've been in tactical surveillance countermeasures for 34 years. That's TSCM. That's Tango Sierra. Charlie Mike.
Right.
So that's basically like listening devices or eavesdropping, that kind of thing. You can look that up. And essentially, I'm the guy that makes sure comms are secure. There's no listening devices. That it's evolved quite a bit since the Cold War, but more so that when eBay became more available to that type of gear, if you will, that was more mainstream. So people could get access to that kind of tech and check on their cheating spouses and that kind of thing. Nice. So a lot of it was that.
So you had a lot of business at that point.
Oh yeah, it's always been consistent because I was a contractor you've heard the expression contractor, so you can fill in the blanks. So for many agencies, law enforcement and so on, private sector, financial sector. So being that I'm in an area that is, I have to be careful with how I say certain things because I also don't want to reveal how exposed I am to a lot of this information.
Right. So
we are privileged to where we need to be on whatever assignment that it is. And if you're past any layer of security or whatever the case is, whether you are in the know or need to know or not, you could very well have gone home with quite a bit of information you probably should not have heard. So I'll leave that at that, because it would take a hellified list of backtracing of assignments to figure out what I may know and what I don't know.
Well, we just don't have time for all that.
No, we don't have time for that. So I want to stick to that the base. Yep. The reason I even got I've been in this field for a long time, right. And within the phone company of 2001, a lot of the contractors that worked for the phone company at the time were let go shortly after 9/11.
Interesting time frame right there.
Yeah, it was we were still. That was when I was actually working for the phone company in that type of capacity, along with traditional services, if you will, POTS, which means plain old telephone service, that kind of thing.
Right.
Lots of kooks out there that would think that they were being listened to, wearing their foil caps and whatnot. And sometimes they were telling the truth, but unfortunately, I couldn't tell them that they were right.
Right.
You get yourself jammed up with an investigation, and you can impede those kind of things. So I love my kids. I love my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to have the consequence come down on somebody that's trying to do their job.
Right.
So, with that being said, shortly after 9/11, I had been activated as in the National Guard on 9/11, and shortly after that, the phone company got rid of all their contractors, and I had to go. I went to work for an investigator. So I'll segue to that. That was a private investigator. It led off with custody, cases and things like that, within that genre. I wasn't a big fan, but I didn't question my path because it was putting food on the table. The kids were, maintaining what they were eating, and just stability in the unknown at that time.
Right.
Around, I'm going to say, it's got to be mid-October 2001. I learned that literally my best friend since kindergarten was in World Trade Center. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, and he along with an area classmate, younger classman, had passed as well, and the former chief of police from the area was also in the building. I wasn't as close to him, even in work capacity, but still, obviously a great guy. I expressed my condolences to his family and all their families, but that changed my career, my trajectory to step things up in a way that I didn't. It was more patriotic duty. What can I do to never have this happen again?
Right.
So I was on that bandwagon for quite some time.
Well, this whole thing changed the trajectory for a lot of people and a lot of policies and a lot of things. Good, bad, and indifferent. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about some of those today.
That ripple effect it did change everything. And, there's been many ripple effects in our history if people actually take the time to actually figure out whether or not that was bullshit or not. Mm-hmm. With the latest, political climate and everybody hearing the catchphrases of fake news and this and that, it truly is a matter of what they want you to hear. Mm-hmm. So, and if you want to call it a psyop or whatever op they want to call it,
right?
That's not my wheelhouse, so I'm not going to talk on that. I may point to it, but not. I don't want to go too deep into that.
Gotcha.
So, with that being said, all I could see is I know who the bad guys are. This is the direction because my leaders tell me so.
Yeah.
And my oath my oath is my oath. Anybody that's ever worn a uniform, or in any capacity that has to swear an oath to our country and the Constitution, they know what we're referring to.
Right.
So there's those that take it seriously, and those that that think they are, but they're weak as hell. I don't know. I want to go into that either.
Right.
So with that being said, years later, you find out that something doesn't smell right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something doesn't add up. And with today's political climate and learning all that we've learned since 2016 and how much people can really put a stick in the spokes in other people's progress and waste effort and time, trying to impeach or do whatever they can to derail a perfectly good candidate for their own self-purpose and, unjust enrichments and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Backtrace to this moment. And while these are expressed opinions of what we're talking about here, it's more of a kind of a to-do list. Like, if you're interested in this type of content and you want to really try to debunk what we're saying, this is more of a constructive conversation to say, this doesn't smell right. This is what we found. I can't go into further detail because there's nothing I can cite.
Right.
And I don't want to lean towards something that I actually know. All I can tell you is that at the end of the day, I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted in those that were at the helm at that time. I personally believe that the VP at that point is the absolute devil. There's without a question in my mind, and I'm actually, Republican leaning.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that I'm diehard in that political spectrum that I'm not going to call him out when they need to be
They need
called
to
out.
be, yeah,
You know,
exactly.
there's too many coincidences. There's too many unknowns. There's footages that footages. There's footage that has been released. It may not be public is the problem. So the footage that we've seen and the contents that we've seen will come out eventually.
Oh yeah.
Just because they produced a book with a commission, blah blah blah, doesn't mean that it's actual and factual.
Well,
There's
it's
going
like,
to be
yeah, it's
it's going
like
to come out.
who published it, who paid for who funded the publication of that. I mean, if people start following the money, follow the money. Of
That's always
course,
the money.
yeah, they're investigating themselves is basically what they're doing. So you think they're going to say, "Oh yeah, we did that." No, they're going to cover it up, right?
You don't have a alleged Saudi sponsored incident here, and then wake up in Iraq. Okay.
Isn't that
So,
an interesting twist of the world right there? Yeah.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden it's Iraq. Hussein is insane. I mean, there was a jump there. Hey, and we all believed it. We all were just fed this information that it was weapons of mass destruction. I believe that for a long time. Oh yeah, he did. He had all the mustard gas and whatever other gases he had to kill his people and all that stuff. And there may be a little of that is truth, but you're right. I mean, Bin Laden was Saudi.
Could you imagine him watching his news going, oh shit, poor Osama's about to get his ass whooped, and all of a sudden you got his door kicked in, and they have to discover him looking like some kind of a troll doll in a dirt pit, buried underneath a manhole cover or whatever the hell it was when they discovered him.
Oh yeah.
So, and then they dragged him, hung him. I'm thinking of Libya at the moment, but so you've got some instances where I'm going to refer to the landscaping of bush and little shrub, if I could be so corny.
Oh,
so
sounds good to me.
So we have big bush and little shrub, and big bush, while he may have been out of the office, in an official capacity, he may have been out of the office of the Charlie agency, as I'll refer to it,
right?
Which is in his past, obviously. He could still have the finger, the thumb on the pulse, if you will, of everything.
Of course.
And still, just like similar, this past administration, damn well, those that were in office were not running the show. So there's always an outside influence.
Oh yeah.
And that's pretty much the continuation of their campaign. Now, there's speculation of whether or not that was even a flawed political, or an election. And I'm sorry for not being as fluid. I'm kind of trying to, figure out my words as I say them. So.
No, you're fine. You're totally good. I'll try to interject some questions here and there and stuff to keep things flowing as well. So basically, we're talking about getting into a little more in depth into the behind the scenes incidences and whatnot that went on that people don't really realize. And over the years, as I've kind of watched all these different documentaries like Loose Change and all these other ones that talk about were the buildings brought down and were they brought down on purpose and who did it? Was it the U.S. government? Was it really the hijackers? Because I'll tell you, I know some pilots and I've listened to some interviews with some pilots. I don't have that for this one right now, but they're saying it's pretty much near impossible to fly a 757 that low to the ground into the Pentagon, let alone into the two towers. So put some comments in the down below and let us know what you think about something like that. It'd be interesting to see. We're just trying to present some more information that makes you question a little bit more. Wait a minute. None of this shit sounds logical. None of this shit sounds like it makes any sense. They try to make it make sense. They did that for a long time. It's been 23 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all know kind of what happened with the two towers. You got the first plane that flew into the building miraculously. Probably not morale. Okay, give it the fact that these guys could probably do that. But when you're training on a Cessna and shit like that, and it's a little bit different getting to a cockpit of a jumbo jet. So when the second one came in, and then you and I were talking about this earlier before we came on about how the United, can't remember the flight number, the one that hit the second tower, the South Tower, how that a lot of people were saying they didn't see any markings, no United Airlines, and at the time United had gray jets, painted gray and red and white stripes, and then the U logo was red and blue, and it was on the tail, and you said United down the side. A lot of people didn't see that. They just saw a gray jet or didn't really realize it. And so did it happen that way? I don't know. But you and I were talking about this. How long has it been? How many decades have we had the ability to have a remote controlled jumbo jet, 757, 767? How long we had the ability to do something like that, to fly one like that?
Open source, it's unknown. Yeah, we don't know how long it's been that they've been able to do that. I mean, obviously, just think of it as a giant drone.
Yeah.
So, to be able to do that,
decades probably, right?
Oh yeah, it's just a scale of what these hobbyists are doing right now, and in some of these airports, they get their, I don't know if you've ever seen these mini planes or helicopters and whatnot. They're pretty badass jets, and they're just taking up a huge level, like huge investment.
Yeah.
But just imagine a real plane and having the ability to do that. We don't need to have anybody man these things anymore.
It's just a giant RC plane.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. So everybody kind of knows about that. We could do a deep dive into the whole thing about the thermite explosions and things like that. That may have brought down the towers. Because there's really, it's virtually impossible. I'm sorry, people who think that these buildings that tall would fall into their own footprint. Basically, there's no way in hell that would naturally happen that I've ever seen in my entire. Have you ever seen something like that?
I've never seen the amount of buildings in that close proximity to begin with.
Yeah.
Go down in their footprint within a time frame, right? So we're going to touch on a couple things. I know that's a broad paintbrush right there.
Yeah.
But you have to talk about motive first of all.
Right.
Like the who, what, where, how, when, how, and why, or whatever. You have a building. You have an investment. You have these giant towers that are absolutely chock full of asbestos. It's just not cost effective to abate such a large project. There's a lot of the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. I can't even say it. The bullshit. That goes along with trying to get things passed or done, and even our current POTUS soon to be POTUS knows what it takes for a skyscraper to be built.
Yeah.
Imagine what it takes to have it disassembled.
Right.
The cost that goes along with that. It's just ridiculous.
No, yeah.
So you need something staged, an event to rekindle some American spirit. I don't know, or just to bypass the bullshit is what you do by taking these buildings down.
It's a distraction.
Now, it's a distraction. It's shit's gonna happen. So let's just roll with it. And we're gonna get our point across. We'll survive, and this too shall pass, type of thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, with all that they didn't pull off the greatest stunt because they had one dud. That was WTC-7.
I call WTC-7 the redheaded bastard stepchild of the three sisters or brothers. We all know about the two buildings, but then the WTC-7, that's interesting. I want to get into that with you because it's quite interesting what's going on. So let me bring up a couple of videos here, and then we'll get some more comments from you, of course. Where this is a video from about 12 years ago, and it's the former Minnesota governor and world wrestling champion Jesse Ventura. what was he with, the WWE, whatever. And he had some interesting takes on kind of what's going on here. And this is a couple minutes long, but we may not play the whole thing, but we'll just kind of check it out here, and then we'll talk about this in a second. Then I want to show a couple videos of why we say falling into its footprint, and you'll see if you haven't seen this footage before, it'll blow you away. If you have seen it before, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Jesse,
what
would you have done on September the 12th, 2001? What would you have done if you'd been president?
What would I have done?
Yeah.
I would have done a legitimate...
So how much did it cost to fill your tank?
Almost $100.
How much is the car payment?
$140.
a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened on 9/11. How did they know who did this so quickly like they did Lee Harvey Oswald? How quick they knew Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy.
Because the people who did it were identified and we knew who they were.
Well, then why couldn't we have stopped them beforehand if they were identified and we knew who they were?
It was a failure of intelligence. Everyone's accepted
No, it
that.
wasn't. We knew before with Condoleezza Rice's memo on August 6th when it stated right in the memo, bin Laden to steal planes and run them into buildings. And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Okay, Jesse.
No, it'll come off.
That'd be ridiculous.
Wait a minute.
There,
Every war
a little bit more of that, but now that was also interesting because when he talked about they ignored the evidence with bin Laden and things like that, I think some of us remember that Bill also had bin Laden in his grasp and
Yes.
did nothing, let him go or whatever it was.
Yep. Sure did.
So there's something going on with the U.S. government and this Saudi citizen, Osama bin Laden, that's very interesting, and people aren't really seeing what's the big picture on this.
That's the Bush family involvement with the bin Ladens go back many, many, many years. So, I mean, that business is business.
Yeah.
You know, if you trace the money back in all their different walks of life, I mean, you have, Big Bush and Little Shrub or whatever. So Big Bush has been, on boats with, literally with the manufacturer of, if you remember, cigarette boats, the race boats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
Yeah, like Miami Vice type stuff. That back then, the racing. So with drug cartel leaders, I mean, you're going to rub elbows with some bad people. When, bad people to us, that's because they're told that they're bad people on the news. They do bad things and they profit, and it's business. Business is business, just like everything else that goes on, whether it's immigration or it's the school faculty. For God's sakes, anything that has a board, a town, a hamlet, a city, they're all in corporations. For God's sakes, everything's got to be run like a business. So there's jurisdictions and blah blah blah.
Right.
So back to the towers, those buildings were an investment that they needed to change. So they needed an event.
Yeah.
Right? The contracts, the contracts of the security companies that took over, it was 48 hours of complete dark. Anybody that has any surviving employees that were in World Trade Center, if anybody can comment below that they actually can recall having a stand down or not being able to go to work for 48 hours. This wasn't telecommuting days. This was, we're doing an update on the system. We ask that you don't come in for 48 hours. So those contracts were actually awarded to a relative of Bush's.
Oh, yeah.
That can be dug in. That, if we have to cite all this shit, that's fine. Because right now we're just kind of shooting the shit.
Right.
So you can either debunk it or put in your 2 cents or whatever the case is. I'm pretty sure of what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that I know that I can't cite,
Right.
which is, and I'm actually a little shit shy of saying anything at all because it's just you never know anymore, especially until the next with all the stuff that Trump has been put through. Whether even if who the hell knows, that could have been scripted too. He is the king of reality TV, so who the hell knows?
Well, everybody said that it was staged when he got caught in the ear. It's like, okay.
You can't script a story. I mean, that's all he cares about is polls and and making good TV, television, right? TV programming, blah blah blah.
Right.
So all this bullshit that's going on back to World Trade 7 is, with Silverstein being quoted saying that the building was unsafe, so it had to be pulled. That is a demolition term. Pulling is a demolition term.
Yeah.
The crimp in the roof and all this other bullshit. Yes, there was damage to the building, but not enough to take the building down into its footprint.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's no way in hell that you could get a pizza delivered, let alone the enough, whatever the hell it takes to bring a building down of that size, and prep it and stage it and everything else so it comes down safely. So you have what is called a dud. And all they had to do is find out where it didn't work with all the little trash can fires that were caught on film. I mean, literally trash can fires for smoke. Are you shitting me? Wow. Seriously.
Well, here's
yes, there was fire on the back side of the building, but none of that was structurally compromising enough to go into its own footprint. No. The closest I've ever seen to that amount of buildings was recently. I'm going to say just before COVID, China they basically made a bunch of buildings. It looked like they had created all these skyscrapers. None of them had any occupancy, which, by the way, I want to touch on that quick. Okay. None of them had occupancy. So, and eventually they just took them all down. So you can actually research demolition in China, and they'll see these skyscrapers go, wow, like one after another. And so the frequency of that is kind of like in their turf, whereas you and I would only have been able to see something like that in Vegas, or in the Midwest when they take down a silo or something like that. Well, this is the largest building in New York City.
Yeah. God, yeah. And one of the largest in the world. At the time, it was the largest in the world.
But the people that say, well, how could they do that to their citizens? Are you shitting me?
They don't care.
They do it every day.
Collateral damage. Yeah.
Collateral damage. 80% of the people that are in the intel community are some amazing ass people, man. Mm-hmm. You've got maybe 85. A good solid 15 they're the most soulless, heartless. I just can't wrap my head around it. I mean, there's people like Dahmer out there too that eat their, come on. Right. I mean, we can't wrap our heads around it. It's just because we couldn't do it, then we don't believe it. But believe me when I tell you, the shit that goes on in this world behind paywalls, even on the app that they may be watching this on, or like one of the big ones, there's paywalls out there that pique people's, tickle their pickle, and want to get they want to enjoy themselves in their sick ass morbid way in their privacy. Yeah. And this is just another part of that world. Yeah.
I appreciate
and they took it down.
My private life. Anyway.
Hey, I brought up the pickle, but
I know, and I tried not to react. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Got to see your Humpty dance.
Exactly. Well, now you mentioned our good buddy Larry Silverstein, who was the one who financed, funded, and built the Twin Towers way back in the day. In what was it, 73 or 77, somewhere in there?
I think it was 77.
Yeah, somewhere right in there. And here's just a little video of exactly what you were mentioning that he was talking about the assets of the building and redevelopment and things like that.
In the event of any damage to the buildings, it was my obligation to repair the damage or replace whatever is necessary, to do it as quickly as possible, like kind, like quality. The buildings came down. My obligation now was to put them back. It dawned upon me very, very swiftly that we couldn't let this go. We couldn't let this sit fallow, because there were families leaving Lower Manhattan by the thousands. I mean, they couldn't get out of here quickly enough. Commercial firms were leaving. The only way to reverse it was to rebuild. The only way to rebuild with private money.
Is he like full of shit trying to sell a story, trying to sell his plan here, or is he just trying to appeal to the masses? And
not once did he say anything, not even express his condolences for the massive lives that were lost. Yeah. He's worried about his fucking buildings and trying to establish normalcy for the greater good. Get the hell out of here with that shit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
He's full of shit. But let's listen a little bit more, just see what he's talking about, because it's just you'll just be sitting there like, are you effing kidding me?
Was to take the insurance policies that I owned and collect. Instead of roughly $6 billion, we came out with $4.5 billion. People told us, "Hey, you'll never succeed. You'll never lease it. No one's going to want the space. You'll never rent it. You'll never finance it. Don't build it." Everybody told us, absolutely insane to do what I was doing, right? But I didn't listen to them, and I went ahead, built this building, and the net result is
He didn't listen to them because what? He knew he had something in his back pocket that he knew was going to make him successful.
what's crazy is if you look at if there is the ability to backtrace all of these designs and thoughts and everything else that led up to, like, if he moved so fast, how fast does it take? How efficient do you have to be to come up with a drawing of the new World Trade Center and have, like a memorial and all that stuff sketched out? I'd be curious to see when it was first introduced and signed off on and approved and coordinated to be able to erect that building and all that was around it in honor of the fallen and everything else. The hallowed ground thing, out of respect to kind of diffuse the situation. But
Right,
you have,
appease the family so he didn't get more lawsuits and things like that.
well, they know he's going to get lawsuits either way, but
Yeah.
it's not even so much his lawsuits. It's the whole. There's so many, asbestosis and all the World Trade Center, the dust. He's not responsible for any of that. That dust.
Right.
Which is basically everybody that was in the building plus asbestos and all the chemicals and everything else that were pulverized.
Yeah.
But that took an awful lot of momentum to come down from two little planes. In retrospect,
Right.
that's literally like. The smallest. That's a small. It would have to have been a fuel tank the size of the Hindenburg, for God's sakes, for them to even come close to something that would melt anything.
So,
that building was exoskeleton.
So what would you say to the people that are saying, well, steel melts at 2,500 degrees or whatever? The temperature.
It could have been 6,000 degrees. 6,000. It's going to be isolated. And eventually it heats up and everything else, but it's still, you have an exoskeleton of the building is structurally solid on the outside. If you look at the ribbing and everything on the outside, you listen to the engineers that actually designed and built the damn thing.
Right.
They know that those planes couldn't have done shit. Okay. Now back to the occupancy of those buildings. If there was an overlay to what was going on in those buildings, if you saw, there was service elevators, there was all these different stages of elevators to get to different floors.
Are you talking the Twin Towers or
Twin Towers? Twin Towers. WT7 was definitely controlled. There's no question about it. It just was a dud that they had to rekindle. There's no other way that they could have brought that down as safely as they did without having it properly staged and bring that down safely. It would have been a giant mushroom cloud, for God's sakes, if it wasn't done properly.
Yeah.
So
check this out real quick, and I'll just show that so people can see.
Upper left-hand corner.
This is building 7 right now, and you'll see here we got a bunch that also show some simulations, animation simulations on how this thing. There is no way in hell that this thing would fall naturally into its own footprint with the little amount of fires. Oh, but the damage from the towers hit the building. Bullshit. It's like, come on. Are you that?
They did, but it was shrapnel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Some of these people just don't want to believe that this could happen to our own people from our own government, maybe. I don't know. I'm just
at the end of the day, business is business.
Business is business. So if you haven't seen how this building just falls, there is no way, because when you look at the top, you see right in here this penthouse like structure at the top. Mm-hmm. That thing starts to fall first. How is it that falls in there first, and then all of a sudden the whole building collapses together and then falls straight. Okay, watch and see what you think, and give me some comments on what you guys think that this is. If it isn't a controlled demolition, what is it, and how in the hell does a building like this actually fall naturally?
Looking like a Three Stooges movie covered with plastic, I swear to God. But you got a good kid, man.
It fell into itself already, and then oh my God, the whole building is. Oh my God! Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How does the left side fell into itself first, but then all of a sudden the building exactly fell like this? It didn't like fall on the left side and then the whole thing collapsed in and then fell.
I want to know if anybody is able to listen to this that knows of anybody in their family. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that may have been in the military or service and whatnot that have done demolition.
Yeah.
That do that for as their main as their career, whatever.
Keep talking. I'm going to show another video of it collapsing from a different angle on a different street. So, but keep going, brother. Anybody know of a relative that may have passed within the following few years of this?
Because those are the people that may have been in the air, and that flew an airplane or set a debt, or anything that's like that. See, that fire is not hot enough, man.
No.
And that whole area, by the way, is like the stairwell and utility columns of that building. It pops out. There's like the HVAC, and there's no way. Yeah. Free fall speed.
No effing way that thing was natural.
No.
I'm sorry. There's no way. I'm not a structural engineer or anything of the like, but I have eyes and I can see how that makes absolutely no logical sense to me whatsoever.
But now the emotions are high.
Yeah.
Everybody's panicked because they're believing that the threat is real.
Yeah.
The TV is on, but it's right in front of them. Right. This is a super traumatic situation here. Oh, yeah. But when you break it down and you follow the money, it's all about the dollar.
Right.
Mr. Silverstein didn't even blink an eye. He was ready to build again.
Yeah.
And to make everybody, we're going to build back better. Who said that?
Don't even go there because.
Did I just say that?
It's the bizarro world that it's.
Wow, that's a catchy phrase, man.
Oh, that's good though.
Who came up with that?
I think it's.
Did I just come up with that?
I think you just came up with that.
Man, I got to make a T-shirt with that.
Dude,
you should run for office.
Well, it's a good thing that Rude and I are both designers. We could probably do a shirt with that says "Build," and then the World Trade Center up there. I like it. It's very timely. Oh yeah, no, dude, this shit's just crazy. As I'm talking to you, I'm looking through some of these in the simulation. Since we're talking about this and we're making fun of the free fall, let me just jump into this video right here, and you can maybe tell me a little bit more about some of this because you're mentioning it. You're mentioning the stairwells and things like that. But when you have this coming in. Look at that. See, there's where the fires were they're talking about, I believe.
Yeah, okay, so you have the fires on the right side, but it imploded on the left side. Now, keep in mind, this building had very little issues with occupancy. They were fully, they were filled with small movement, moves and whatnot. But if you look into the floors, if you did an overlay of the floors that showed those little compromises on the side of the exoskeleton, just the little plumes of dust, like it looks like plumes of dust coming out, and they said it was a controlled situation.
Yeah.
If you had an overlay of the floors that were unoccupied during that time, which means if you got off on that floor by accident and you're going to, I don't know, the dentist's office or one of the restaurants or whatever the case is, if you've ever been in the building, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. You get off on your floor for work, or you just happen to get off on the floor previous. Well, that floor could wake up. You could open up the elevators to a concrete stripped floor, to a whole hollow floor with little buggies and hard guys in hard hats and literally doing construction. right?
Oh, yeah.
There's union elevator people, there's union electricians, there's union plumbers, union HVAC. There's a lot of moving parts there.
Right.
And what's funny is a lot of these union guys, they don't remember getting any type of like heads up that this work was actually being done.
Yeah.
So is Silverstein, trying to skip out with, and hire scab? Come on, that's it.
Well,
There's,
he did.
there's a
talk
lot of
about
explaining
insurance.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got the insurance money, but the previous to the insurance money with these planes that hit up high,
Oh, right.
when you chop down a friggin' tree, you don't chop it at the top.
Right.
You chop it at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to build up that momentum from the top down for there to be enough inertia to turn everything to dust. Now, my best friend was encapsulated in dust with firemen in a stairwell.
Yeah.
When they discovered his body on the 1st of January of 2002. Now that's what his father-in-law stated when he, identified his body. But, are we lucky, or was he just trying to make everybody feel better? Because, we lost we lost a friend. Everybody lost some sort of a friend or a relative or something if they lived down there. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we're still affected to this day. So now we're unhinged with every little thing. We're hand shy with every little incident that comes our way.
Right.
We're in pure disbelief when something catastrophic happens. I mean, look at how many masks that we had to wear during. It's supposed to block this evil little parasite that that's airborne. Yet we could smell somebody's cologne, or if they pass gas. Guess what? Those particles are even bigger than or smaller, whatever the hell the case was. So I'm gonna go off on a tangent. You know how I get. My apologies.
The video of some of this stuff showing the structure of 7 and the girder system, and then the overlay. Yep. You could probably see it on your phone, so it's gonna be small, but you can still see it. And they're kind of going through, and I'm going to show a list of the tenants as of September 1st or whatever, the first part of the year of 2001. Solomon Smith Barney basically lived in this building. I mean, they were probably at least 50% or more of the tenant space in this building. This is a big ass building too. But as we'll show you in the list, we're going to show you a few other tenants that I don't think a lot of people know about. If you do know, then you've been doing a dive into this like I have, and like T and I have been doing over the years. You'll know what we're saying, and it's kind of interesting because once we get into the tenant list, then I want you to give us your opinion, your thoughts about those tenants being in the building and what that significance may or may not be. This is going to be interesting. I can't remember. Oh yeah, they're going to show just in a couple seconds. They're going to show how this building fell. Damage caused by impacting debris, or as I call debris, from World Trade Center 1.
Yep, the damage that broke the backside there, but that's still not enough.
Yeah. So how is it? I mean, it's like there's no riveting system, there's no bolts, there's no anything, there's no way. It's like in a house of cards how they're showing the simulation of how this building fell.
Yep.
I mean, are you're seeing that, and it didn't see how in the simulation the building is leaning over and then falling. Every single simulation. Look at this.
Now I want you to ask yourself right now, that was perfectly fine. Yeah. It was not showing any signs of, there was nobody jumping out because there was obviously evacuations. Evidently they got everybody out safely in this one, right? Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but they couldn't get the other out.
The other buildings fell. I mean, I can see how they would have gotten there. I wouldn't have stayed in the damn building either if the other towers fell, regardless of intent or in purpose or not. I would have been out of this building too. So,
yeah. But then they had footage, you'll hear the firemen with their locator beacons there, weep, weep, the background.
Yeah.
And then you see people walking through underneath parking garages and so on. And they see there's people with footage of trash cans with
Yeah.
fire. Why is there flames in trash cans?
Right.
There's no reason for anybody to. What are they burning evidence
Yeah.
in a trash can the size of a freaking hard hat?
Right.
I mean, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's all ridiculous bullshit. It's staged. You know, I mean, it's.
When
I don't know.
when you do a controlled demolition, and I know you've done many in your time, that
Not me.
yeah, well, exactly. That this building falling into its footprint is going to cause the least amount of damage around. So they want to, and I say they, we all knew who they is. Do we? I don't know. But anyway, they, because there's no way this is a real natural organic thing that they would have wanted it to do, because they want to make it look like they're destroying things to get the country all pumped up and patriotism together and all this stuff, and like, oh, there's evil, Saudis and Egyptians and everybody who flew the planes. If this fell naturally, imagine the amount of buildings that would have been destroyed, damaged from these buildings falling into these other buildings.
It's faster to take these down the way that they did
Yeah.
than it is to take it. It's like, well, that building's unsafe, so we're going to need to come in here with cranes and get everything situated. No, it's unsafe, so we needed to pull it.
Right.
So explain to me where you sourced that material to be able to bring it down. How did you possibly install in such short fashion after the first two fell that it was in place? How could you get that building down in that safe of a manner
Right.
if it wasn't already pre-staged and it had to be reactivated, if you will, re-energized, redeaded? It's ridiculous that we're that naive that we think that they wouldn't do that to us. I got news for you.
Oh
They
yeah.
do it all the time. They don't give a shit about us. It's, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like the phone company, gets caught out there, or whatever the services, could be your cable provider. They leaked your information, or there's a compromise, or they did something shady. They get sued for multi-billions of dollars, and we end up with a $3.50 check and a slap on our ass. You know what I mean?
It's, thank you.
It's built in.
Yeah.
It's built into the bullshit.